go. Welcome back for our afternoon keynote with Dr. Sarah Howard. First, before we begin that, I've got some housekeeping to go through here. Tomorrow is just as high an impact day as today. We've got an amazing start with Dean Groom and Dr. Bron Stuckey doing presentation. We have students participating in lots of interactive demonstrations. These are students from both primary and secondary schools. And of course, we have our extraordinary conference doodler and deliverer of the final keynote, Dr. Jason Fox. He'll be delivering the final keynote for the day. So if you haven't already enrolled for tomorrow, you are more than welcome. And please go see Jenny Lewis at the Rego desk at the end of the day, which is just outside in the foyer, and make sure you sign up for another fun day tomorrow. Dr. Sarah Howard. If the digital education revolution was a Facebook account, then the relationship status of teachers adopting technology and effectively integrating it in classrooms would be, it's complicated. Our next speaker, Dr. Sarah Howard, is here to discuss why some teachers use ICT, while others couldn't care less. Please make her welcome with a warm round of applause.
Hello, everyone. Oh, I don't have my... Oh, we're on the lectern over here. All right. All right. My slide's going to go up. Yay. There we go. So I used a plane today, you know, with a theme and everything. Right? Come on. Come on, it's 3:45. Okay, so I am, as I said, Dr. Sarah Howard. I'm at the University of Wollongong, and indeed I do the DER New South Wales evaluation. I've been working on that since 2010, as many of you, I'd imagine, would be deeply familiar with it. But today we're here to talk about experimentation, change, and so in homage to this, I have used a different presentation format, which is very exciting. And I have to admit, while a good portion of my students use Prezi, and I advocate use of different presentation styles, I have for the first time endeavored to use a Prezi presentation, right? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. It's a bit goofy. I mean, I actually in a former life was a graphic designer, and so it's a bit goofy that I am so dependent on PowerPoint, but we will talk about all of these things throughout my presentation. Now, again, playing around with the movement. I'm in the Interdisciplinary Education Research Institute, University of Wollongong, and we have our homage to the DEC logo there, because we are going to be looking at, some of the data we'll look at will be from the DER data collections. Other data will be from research projects I've done in other places. Now, so, again, back to my Prezi, which is really of the utmost importance right now. This is going to lead me into two topics I'm going to address today regarding to supporting teachers and encouraging them and enabling teachers to experiment with technology integration. So, as we well know, not everyone is super keen to integrate with technology, and that's absolutely fine. But there are a number of ways that we would like students to be able to learn. There are a number of ways we would like people to engage with content and knowledge and communication and sharing and all of those things that we do these interactions are available through technology. And there are a number of ways that students can learn through technology that we want to make available to them. And to do that, we need our teachers to begin to bring these tools in, okay? So, but student learning and the outcomes and what have all that's a little bit of a different argument. Today we're going to look at helping the teachers take risks in their teaching, okay? And technology use. And with an eye on teachers creating teaching options by giving them tools to experiment with ICT. Now, we're also doing a dual experimentation. Not only am I using Prezi, but I'm actually bound to this lectern, and you can see me kind of pulling from side to side. So it makes me a little bit, usually I pace a little bit more, but we're all right, we'll work through it, and you'll see in a moment why. Now, the other thing we're going to talk about quite a bit today is leadership. The title of this, what Plain is looking at, is Do It, Share It, Lead It. And so leadership, all change is risk. Some people are more likely to take risks than others, and this is just how we are. This is just ours. And part of it's our nature, part of it's the work that we do. But these differences, while they're based on individual values, they are also based on the values of our group, of our organizations, of our cultures, of the people that we identify with. And in teachers' cases, these are schools, or they're disciplines, or subject areas, or a particular grade level. There are a number of groups that we identify with. And so in this mind, for teachers, leading and leadership is a big part of the choices that they make in technologies that they use, as well as what they value in learning and teaching. So, using my Prezi as an example, and talking about risk-taking, and talking about leadership, and talking about group commitment, right? So me making my Prezi. Now, I haven't done this before, so I'm taking a big risk, right? So, and what better to take a big risk than in a keynote presentation, right? Why not? Why not? I could have just as easily done this in a lecture or in even a tutorial, but no, hell, why not? Let's do it in a keynote. Let's make it really high stakes, right? So this is what I choose to do, because normally I use PowerPoint. Why do I use PowerPoint? Because I'm an academic, because I work at a university, because PowerPoint there is pretty much the bar, right? Like my research group, Erie, they give us our PowerPoint templates. We get one every year to tell us to use it, all right? All right, so why use a Prezi? Why did I choose in this instance to make a change? So probably about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years, a colleague of mine, Di, says to me, Sarah, you know, these PowerPoints, they need some spicing up. They're just not going to do it. And I said, I'm an academic. What do I need with spicy presentations? I've got content, I've got knowledge, I've got all of these important things that you'd be naturally drawn to. I don't need to make it appealing. You should be compelled by the information I'm presenting to you. Yeah? Are you guys with me? No. See? Now, you guys don't agree. And this is why. So my identity, my group membership is being an academic. This is what, I know where the standard is, I know what's expected of me. But I'm in a little bit of a different group right now, aren't I? I'm with people who are innovating, that's a priority. And that's important to me as well. And so what do? I step it up. Here I am. I'm using the new, to me, relatively, tool. I've taken a big risk deciding to use it in a keynote as my test run. You know, very well done, Sarah. But the reason I've done it is that I'm motivated by the fact that a leader in your organization that I work with and I value has said to me, Sarah, you know what? Maybe you should consider something else. And so I say, you know what? It's been niggling in my mind for the last year and a half. Every time I put my PowerPoint slides together for the DEC, these are not up to par. These are not good enough, right? And so I make that choice. I've decided that, here I am. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about what it takes to change practice, the risks that are involved in it, why it is that we change, and how as leaders we can help teachers to make those changes, to be able to be motivated to say, what I've been doing is pretty successful, but maybe I could do something else, right? So here we go in our endeavor. I'm going to actually press it, and we're going to go there. Look at the zooming. Gorgeous. Look at that. It was worth it right there, right? It was amazing. It zoomed. It's now going to suspiciously mimic PowerPoint as it moves through, and I will explain this to you. But hell, I'm making a little bit of a step here. I'm really reaching out. All right. So what is a risk? When we ask teachers to take risks, when we ask them to change their practice, what exactly are we doing? All right? What is a risk? It's a possibility of unwanted events, right? Risk is not always negative, though. It's not always unwanted events. Risk can be positive. So without risk, change isn't possible, innovation isn't possible, and there are different magnitudes and different values that people have that make these things risky or positive or negative. But it's all about risk perception and what we believe will happen as a result of action, right? Risk can only occur from actual risk-taking. Otherwise, it's just a perception. It's just what you fear. It's what you're anxious about, right? So, but risk is also social and relative. What we think will happen as an individual decision is actually deeply rooted in our social context. Okay, so these things can be shaped. As I said, they can be shaped by our membership, they can be shaped by leadership, even as something as small as a PowerPoint presentation, right? So as school leaders, you can shape the risks that teachers are willing to take and that they're willing to make in their own teaching, as well as the risks they ask students to take in their own learning. All right, so what's this perception? What does it mean? Look at that. See, I'm getting more confident with it now. It's successfully moved from one side to the next twice, so I can relax a little bit. So what is the perception? Risks are perceived when something we value is at stake, right? What do we value in teaching? The primary value in teaching, what research shows us is the primary value in teaching is student learning, right? That is the ultimate goal that we are going towards, right? We want quality student learning, right? But that can mean different things to different teachers, right? Student learning can mean things like engagement. They can mean lifelong learning. It can mean quality of learning. It can mean achieving on an assessment. It can mean a number of things, okay? So these value systems that we have deeply impact on the risks that we believe we are taking, as well as the good risks that we think we're taking to make things better for the change that we're looking at, right? So when we promote student engagement as leaders, this is valued. When we take up literacy initiatives in schools as leaders, these things are the things that are valued. And when we prioritize testing, these are the things that are valued. This is what teachers benchmark the choices they make against. When we prioritize technology and experimentation, that's the thing that is valued. Okay, so this is what we have to think about, and there are a number of ways we convey these values to teachers as leaders, through policy, through our talk, through our actions, through the support that we provide to them, right? Because all the choices we make are balances of costs and benefits, a balance of what we value and what will be impacted by risky actions, okay? So again, back to the critical issue of today, which is truly my Prezi presentation. So, we couldn't be more concerned because I'm deeply concerned about it. So, what's at risk here? What's my cost-benefit analysis in doing this presentation this way? And if I was teaching, it would be exactly the same thing. If I was lecturing, it'd be exactly the same thing, okay? So, what's the cost? The cost is the possibility of it failing and my presentation being a total disaster. I'm going to guess at least it hasn't failed, so I'm going to go with not total disaster just yet, but that was a distinct possibility. Now, if I didn't strongly value intrinsically doing things differently and pushing my own boundaries, the risks that are much higher, which is failure of my presentation versus playing with an experimental tool and having a bit of a go, that's my benefit. If I didn't strongly value intrinsically what's inside of experimentation, then why would I risk my presentation? Why would I do that? In the teacher's case, why would they risk student learning for something they just think is bells and whistles? They have to intrinsically value to take the risks, to be supported to take the risks. Now, so this is often discussed in how we choose. Some people like to take risks more. I actually tend to be a risk taker. I also tend to be complacent about my PowerPoint presentations, as we've discussed. So when we talk about things, we talk about the difference between risk seekers and those that are more risk averse, right? As I drift away from the microphone, as I say a really key point, well done, Sarah, right? All right, so risk seekers. Risk may be valued or at least not a limiting factor in the decisions that they make. So they'll have a go. They're like, all right, yeah, we'll see what'll happen. So it's important to consider that this person may not be a risk seeker in all domains. It depends, again, on what they choose to do. Like, for example, I don't like to jump out of planes. I just don't. Does anyone here like to jump out of planes? Right? No. I mean, frankly, I think the risk is simply too high because imminent death is pretty real when you jump out of a plane. Although, if you like to jump out of planes, if you're into free fall and you value the thrill and experience, these people will say, oh, hell, it's not that risky. Like, yeah, you could die, but the chances are, who knows? I've done it tons of times, and I've never died. See? I'm right here, right? So you can have that kind of argument. In my teaching, I like to take risks. I like to do big projects. I like to do things I'm not sure will work. My 360 first-year students have well experienced this, believe me, recently, in just bringing a whole bunch of software in and having them have a go with it. I like to take those kinds of risks. Jumping out of planes? Not so much. In my teaching? Sure, why not? Let's have a go, right? So, what this is this is our affective response to things, right? A lot of it is based on, I don't know anything about skydiving, but I bet that it's dangerous, right? It just looks dangerous, right? I don't know what the stats are. I don't have any real knowledge on it, right? I'm just intrinsically don't think it's a bad idea. It's based on almost no knowledge, right? Because we have affective responses to things. People, you hear people say things like in the case of technology, I'm not a technology person, or yeah, I'm definitely a technology person. I get technology, right? What does I'm not a technology person even mean? They've had some bad experiences. They don't value it. Like this is for a number of reasons that are quite likely valid. But that's how they see it. So they just look at a new piece of technology and go, oh, yeah, I don't want to touch that. I'm not a technology person. I've got the bad juju, you know? Like I don't want to get into that. But these are, or yeah, sure, I'll have a go because they have positive experiences, right? So it's all part of the cost-benefit evaluation. All right, so like I said, without risk, there's no change. Now, in the case of me constructing my Prezi, what were my risks? What is a risk perception when we choose to change a practice? So, for me, saving. Saving, is this presentation saved yet? How about now? What if I save it one more time? Did my browser crash? What about now? Is it saved? I should probably download it again, just in the off chance that it didn't save, right? Flash. Risk number 2, flash. I don't even know if it needs flash. This was a complete perception in my brain. Like I had decided that the flash is critical. Is the laptop I'm using going to have the latest update of flash? Does it need flash? Not that I looked any of this up, but I definitely churned over it while manically saving my presentation as I made it, right? Manically saving it, thinking to myself this whole time, the third risk, time. Do I have time to make this crazy, I haven't even moved slides yet. Crazy Prezi presentation. Can I do this? Yes, Sarah, you can do it. You are a technology person. You can do this. You have the time. You can write this presentation. At this point, I'm 15 minutes into creating my Prezi, right? I've gone through 3 different arguments with myself. My mind is spinning, but I persevere because I value experimentation, I value risk-taking, and I can hear Di telling me to spice it up in my head, so I go for it. All right? So, our research shows teachers, regardless of whether they are risk seekers, they are risk averse, they are technology people, or they're not technology people, they perceive the same risks, right? Someone else, less of a risk taker, would say, but this isn't going to save, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, I don't know if it's going to have the right software, and that would stop them dead in their tracks. Someone else, such as myself, barely perseveres through it yesterday, okay? So, these are the things we have to look at when we talk to our teachers. We look at them, we talk to them, we listen to their rationales. What are the things that they're worrying about? Woo! There we go. What are the risks in teaching, right? The very number 1, the biggest risk, is quality of learning, student learning. So this is what is seen to be at risk most of the time. And this is what you hear in teachers' rationales for the choices that they make, for the technologies that they take on. Again, this is contingent on beliefs about student engagement and student achievement, right? This is also strongly related to what their perception of quality teaching may be, okay? As well as their teaching efficacy and their sense of professionalism, okay? So these things are really at stake for teachers. And when something that we value is at stake, that's when we perceive risk. And that's when we get into these cost-benefit analysis. Is it really worth it? Is it worth sacrificing my possible professionalism to use a new tool with a class I'm not sure I can control? And then are they going to learn? A number of arguments come into these things, okay? So when they talk about teaching and taking risks, they talk about their own beliefs, about their confidence, about their capability, and using the technology. Now, as teachers over the last few years, as teachers' competence using technology and confidence has slowly started to increase, and believe me, it has increased. We do see increases. It's more about talking about using it in their teaching? How does it support my teaching? Okay? So these are, and what about learning outcomes? How does it support learning outcomes? And what about 21st century learning outcomes? What are those even? You know, are those different than higher order thinking skills? Is it? All very gray for teachers right now. And the issue of time. Always time. Preparation time, time teaching, time to cover all the dot points. These are, I mean, this is critical. Everyone will say it. But what about time? There's always limited time. And yeah, there is limited time. But as leaders, these are the kinds of things that, this is the kind of thing that you can actually provide. Like, this is something that you can actually give to teachers in some small way or some concession. And so, but these are the big risks that come out. So, we're going to look at some of the things teachers say in relationship to these particular three risks. All right? And to do this, we're going to look at some of the DER New South Wales data from 2011, which I had mentioned. And you guys are familiar with that. We do questionnaires, and we're going to look specifically at some of the data that comes out of the case studies. I could wear my glasses as well. I'll put these over here. So, we're going to look at some of the data from the 5 case studies involved in the evaluation. And this comes from interviews and focus groups. We're also going to look at some data from another research project I do that looks at laptop use in the classroom. Now, the important thing to note is that I'm using data that did not directly ask teachers about risk-taking. Okay? These responses are from interviews and focus groups on the DER laptops and general use in teaching and learning. So these excerpts are taken without prompting of what do you see as risk or what do you find to be risky. And the reason I've done this is to show you and to illustrate that the concept of risk is always on our minds. We're always doing these cost-benefit analyses of what are the risks and what can I do. But we don't actually spend the time addressing them. But we do in a bit of a roundabout way, but it's all very kind of conceptual. All right, so first we'll talk about learning. And we're going to talk about the typical kind of quote that someone who, you know, through observing the teaching and from doing full interviews and focus groups that we'd classify as risk seeker. So risk seeker in learning. So you'll see they're talking about a dynamic environment that's facilitated with technology. And you'll see that they talk about, they explicitly mention risk-taking. Again, this was unprompted. And then they will say everyone's collaborating, they're bouncing off each other, and they produce much higher work. Okay, so they're collaborating, they're bouncing off. And as teachers, you know what this kind of looks like. It's not a well-controlled environment when we do this. So they look at what's dynamic. They look at experimenting with technology in the classroom. They will also, as they have in this, discuss learning in terms of student experience, higher order skills, collaborating, or 21st century skills, how you want to talk about it. And this teacher I happen to know does quite a bit of online discussion and collaborating within their learning, that they do tend to border towards more of a student-centered practice if you want to kind of group things in those kinds of camps. And you'll see that the teacher feels that the students work better in this, even though they're engaging in a risky classroom format, right? So they're working in a more unstructured format, which has a higher potential of students not learning exactly the content that we need them to learn. All right? So in contrast, wait for it, this is going to get crazy. Look at that. It went horizontal, not even vertical. Wasn't that odd? And I'll tell you, I put that in afterwards because I said to myself, oh, Sarah, this looks an awful lot like PowerPoint. This was after I'd become accustomed to it. We're going horizontal. And then I'm like, wait, do you see what it does next? The more risk-averse in learning. They also, I chose both these because they're both talking about discussion. So this particular teacher, like the other teacher, does in fact use technology in their classroom, but they tend to do a bit more IWB use. They tend to have a stronger focus on information searches, and that's absolutely fine, and the other teacher does that as well, but that tends to be the ceiling for this particular teacher. Now, the reason I've labeled this teacher as more risk-averse, you'll kind of see as we progress through this. So they tend to in this particular quote, you see that they're both engaging in discussion, and they feel that the discussion that students are having, that you don't get this when you're working on a computer, that they don't get to share in that experience. And they're absolutely right. In a face-to-face discussion, the laptop is not necessary. But also, what this, and through the discussion with this teacher, there are the collaboration opportunities, the discussions that can happen in other forums or other ways that you can interact, were also not valued. So this is not that they weren't valued, but they weren't a realistic option, right? Now, one of the reasons for this is the teacher felt that the learning in this, that they wanted to make sure that the students actually received the knowledge that they needed to receive. Okay? This teacher wanted to make sure that they got a hold of the content and that was conveyed through the discussion. The teacher also tended to keep paper books. So in this, they felt the students were able to be more organized. They felt that this was a better approach. And again, it's a completely valid approach, but they were able to disqualify the examples or other technologies with the idea that they needed to make sure that students learned the exact type of learning and the content that they needed to receive. Now, but what about teaching? And as you'll see as I go through these, teaching and learning, as well as what we'll talk about school culture in a little bit after this, they do interrelate, and in teachers' rationales for why they don't use technology and the risk that they perceive, we do compound these areas, and we've tried to pick them apart as well as we can. But let's look at what they talk about teaching. For a risk seeker, yeah, it was diagonal, did you guys see that? You missed it? You didn't? All right. So, failure, did you see? Look at this. I've tested this 80 times, so you can't see it right there. Can you guys see that on the screen? See where I've lost my quote on the end right there? How sad is that? There we go. Now, if I wasn't so well into my way, I might cram up a little bit. I'd get a little bit nervous, but now we're going to work through it because I've also set expectations for you guys. So this teacher is actually talking about, in this, so when we say risk seekers in teaching, they're likely to take up the technology, and they're likely to be more experimental. Now, there's a really important key in this, is that these teachers are also likely to feel competent as problem solvers and feel that possible failure is not a deterrent, okay? So in this teacher, they'll have a crack at it in the classroom. If it works, oh, I actually only lost the tiny little bit of those letters. If it works, awesome, and if it doesn't, then they'll have a go another time, right? So they lose one lesson. It's not going to be the end all if they lose one lesson and the students have to maybe make it up. Risk averse, you can see I don't have the time. We get into the time argument. I know it sounds bad. They feel shame about it. And they're on a paced curriculum. So there's no time. If they lose a lesson, there's no time. They will fall off the pace. And this gets us to our schools. Risk-supporting groups, the impact of our social culture. The faculty has placed an importance on experimenting and on risk-taking. And if it works, it's okay, and if it doesn't, that's okay too. Risk-limiting groups. Again, there's a stigma in the school, and actually feel like I've got a learning disability. This is a teacher who does not feel competent using technology. They have low confidence, feel like I have a learning disability. I say to my husband, I have a technology learning disability. When they go to professional development days, they can't access it, right? They have a negative affective response. They can't access it, they can't change, they can't take risks. And that's at the school level, in the culture. So what do we do? For one, we create positive experiences and entry-level tasks and clear expectations for these teachers that don't feel that they can participate in school training, that don't feel that they can access, that feel like they have a disability. And we provide strategies for problem solving. So working with groups to create a culture of experimentation, make risk-taking and teaching okay, and be aware of subject area differences. Okay, so again, creating positive experiences. The teacher that we looked at, oh look, now watch this, I've actually done this on purpose. Oh, going back. Oh, we'll go back again. risk supporting groups. These are my two favorites to look at because as leadership, oh, hold on. Oh, back we go. Creating positive experiences, okay? Entry-level tasks and clear expectations, okay? So for those teachers who feel that they don't have the time, who don't have the commitment to actually experiment with technology, who feel that they have the time's too constrained, who feel that they aren't able to access the training that comes through, we need to create entry-level tasks for them and clear expectations. If your school has pacing curriculum, then find spaces within that they can actually experiment with technology and they can have those small entry-level tasks. It doesn't need to be a big, momentous task. Provide strategies for problem solving for my teacher that feels that they have a learning disability, who feels that they can't even enter into training because they don't understand the language. Back again. All right, I'll stop now. Now, work with groups to create culture of experimentation. Make risk-taking and teaching okay and make it expected. Now, to do this, we have to understand what the perceived risks are. We have to understand we're dealing with quality of learning, quality of teaching, and then we're also dealing with issues around time. So we have to make it okay as well as make it expected. And in my talk this morning, I talked about implicit and explicit school expectations. Many schools have technology policies. I've seen if any, school that actually has integration policies, okay, in terms of what is expected of teachers to do. What can they reasonably shoot towards as a goal, okay? Now, these can be different and should be different in each of the subject areas, at grade levels. Everything should be age appropriate and curriculum appropriate, of course, but it needs to be understood that these are different for all teachers and that teachers operate at different levels. So in maths and English, they'll use technology in very different ways and they have very different curriculum, making assumptions. They are different. But the expectations for how they integrate should not be the same, and they should be specific to those areas. And also, as leaders, to model the desired practice that you want. So you create that value as leaders. You say, if for example, the teacher who felt their teaching was constrained by paced curriculum, not that they really voiced that opinion, but they used paced curriculum as a reason why they couldn't use technology. Do the work as leaders, help the teacher to do the work to find the space for them to actually use technology and to integrate it into their teaching. Take the small steps, going back to point one. Create entry-level tasks with those expectations. And as leaders, value the teachers that are making the steps, not always the really successful, I'm the technology person, I'm the person that goes forward, and I'm the visible technology expert in the school, but the smaller ones as well, the ones who are overcoming fear and anxiety, and who are, in times, mortally afraid of using the technology, and aren't able to take those first steps. So these need to be celebrated. And then share. Share these differences with the rest of the school, right? Now, some of the most successful changes that I've seen in schools have to do around the modeling of practice. And this is do it as leaders. And some of the schools we've seen that have been very successful have done it with point one, entry-level tasks, clear expectations. And everyone poo-poos emailing school notes, emails low level or what have you, or electronic roll and these sorts of things. But these are the kinds of tasks that as leaders, I've had teachers saying, like, oh, well, our principal emails us all the information we need to know, and therefore they use email. Those comments I wouldn't have heard 3 years ago. I was at a school and they said, we're a paper-based school, and that's that. They didn't use email. And 2 years later, all their communication is on email. So these are the simple tasks that get teachers to do this, and teachers will, and there are I can talk to you till the day's end about schools being a hierarchical culture and why teachers will do what's expected, but many teachers are in the school because many want to teach, right? And they want to do the right thing, but we have to make it clear to them what the right things are, and nothing is easier to dismiss integrating technology than the reason of, oh, well, but the principal doesn't do it. But my head of school, my head of faculty doesn't do it. The maths faculty doesn't email. We don't use movie projects. These are the easiest rationalizations, the easiest way for teachers to validate why they don't take risks. And honestly, they're actually right when they say those things, because if their head of faculty or their principal isn't doing them, why? Why should they take the risk when their leaders don't take the risk? Okay? And setting those clear expectations and giving them the time. I know you guys have heard it a million times before, and I'm preaching to the choir. But give them the time and the tools to fulfill it. Create the space for them to learn and then to experiment. So, this is a final quote that I will leave you guys with, and then I'll open it up to questions. So, this is a teacher that obviously, that's school that is doing quite well. But it is the fact that they're supported and encouraged and really open up about the kind of professional learning they want to do, and that they're supported with resources, lots of opportunities, and that they're also supportive of the kids being in the process. And this is what we hear for teachers that are actively engaged in experimenting and in playing and in taking risks. And what they say, we are supported, I love this, 110 billion%. That's an awful lot of support, I gotta tell you. That is a lot of support. And they are supported because they're given the tools and they're given the time to take the risks in the classroom. And it doesn't have to be big, it can be very small. And a lot of it is simply making the effort to make it a value. So again, when we value technology, the teachers will value it as well, and they will step up. And so as leaders, you create those values for them. Further reading, if you'd so like. My notes, which cover a range of issues that I did not address, are up on Google Drive, so you can access them that, and the link to this Prezi is on there as well. If you'd like to marvel in my Prezi, again, you can access it through there, and then we go all the way back to the beginning, as we do. And yes, I can. Did you see me hit the other button first? I tried to play it cool, and then I failed. So there you go. Any questions? Any discussion? Any points? Arguments? Insights? Anyone want to go skydiving? All right. I can't believe you guys have any questions. Who thinks they're a risk taker? I'd imagine most of you in here are, if you're here. All right. Well, then we will leave it at that, risk takers. Can I go to the next slide at the beginning again? Oh, I went the wrong way. And here we are. Thank you very much for having me. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Sorry. Thanks so much for a wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Mimicking risk-taking and showing us what we do. Modeling. That's
I modeled
the way.
it.
Modeled the risk-taking for us.
I created the value and I
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for this afternoon. And you are more than welcome to stay for drinks and a barbecue, which begins at 4:45. Kitty Flanagan is going to be providing entertainment from 5 p.m. And that is about it for all my housekeeping. So thank you very much, and I do hope you join us tomorrow as well.